Hi, I'm Robert Hawking, host of The Creators. In this episode, we'll introduce you to Onicio Leal Neto, a brilliant scientist who's created a business that tracks viral disease outbreaks using the power of technology and social connectivity. In our two-part interview, you'll discover how Onicio's business Epitrack was the product of a university thesis and how its model, similar to some of the diseases it has the ability to track, had to repeatedly evolve to attune itself to market needs, ultimately leading to it being a breakthrough tool for tracking COVID in Brazil. A phenomenal example of how social media can play a role in helping society help itself. I originally met Onicio when he was a finalist for a $1 million award through Chivas Ventures because of the potential of his business and its social impact. At that time, the future looked bright, but unlike other videos in our series, the future for Onicio and Epitrack today is uncertain. I hope you enjoy meeting this remarkable man and learning a bit more about the twists and turns that often face even those entrepreneurs with brilliant ideas. Now, over to Onicio. Hello, Onicio Neto. It's so nice to see you. What part of the world are you in right at the moment?
I'm right now in Caruaru, Brazil.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for making time. We had the pleasure of meeting several years ago at Oxford. And at the time, I was so amazed by the kind of work that you were doing, the innovation that you were showing, that I've never forgotten your business venture. And I wanted to use this opportunity for you to introduce it to the audience that the Creators is for. So again, thanks for making some time.
Okay.
Now, Onicio, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how your background and growing up in Brazil led you to launching Epitrack, your venture?
Okay. So I'm a scientist. I'm a biomedical scientist by training, and I have done my entire graduate program, like master's degree and PhD, in the area of public health and epidemiology, which was, by the way, an area completely unknown until the COVID pandemic. Right now, everybody knows what an epidemiologist does, right? And I started Epitrack actually during my master's degree. We were trying to converge all of the scientific knowledge that we were seeing inside of the academic walls. And we realized that the only way, or one of the ways to get this knowledge out of the academia is through entrepreneurship. That's why we founded Epitrack back in 2014. And since then, we are very aligned with our research topics, with our research works there. And this is a good way to trying to balance the time that we could dedicate for academia and for research work, but at the same time dedicating for our business.
Now, there's a few things that I'd like to unpack there in what you just said, but can you just start by telling us a little bit about what Epitrack does?
Basically, we started doing digital disease detection, which is a formal term for digital epidemiology. Basically, we use crowdsourcing, getting, for example, self-report information from individuals, common citizens, and using that data, we are able to predict scenarios for epidemics and disease outbreaks forecasting. We have been doing that for very strategic situations like FIFA World Cup in 2014, during the Olympic Games, several flu seasons in US. And most recently, we were being involved in this pandemic efforts last year here in Brazil, co-founding a product called Brazil Sem Corona, which was the biggest Latin America initiative to tackle COVID-19 through crowdsourcing.
Amazing. So digital disease detection. Now I'm curious about that. So you said that you felt that the only way for the concept, which had been developed while you're doing your master's degree, was to actually turn it into a business. The only way to get it into market was to turn it into a business. Can you explain a little bit about that? Why was that the case? And it seems for somebody who's an epidemiologist, turning and becoming an entrepreneur seems like a bit of a leap. So can you explain how that all came about?
Yeah, so let's imagine 2014, the digital transformation in the health sector was not there yet back in 2014. But at the same time, the academia was working in several verticals related to this digital transformation that we saw a few years later. We realized that the impact that we could bring for the society, applying the technology, applying the methods that we were developing and researching during my master's degree, which would be a good opportunity to accelerate this impact. And in fact, we were some kind of pioneers in Brazil to use this approach aligned with government to tackle epidemics and local disease outbreaks. Unfortunately, several local governments were not ready to afford those technologies back in the days. That's why we were forced to seek a huge partner, which was the Ministry of Health in Brazil. That's why we started our very first product of Epitrack was in partnership with the Ministry of Health in Brazil, which is a huge institution to trying to fight the epidemics that might happening back in that days. But again, COVID-19 pandemic helped a lot for the population understand what or which is the importance of digital epidemiology nowadays. For example, the digital contact tracing efforts that Apple and Google was involved. This is digital epidemiology, and this activity helped a lot to mitigate the risks of new contagion chains of COVID-19. Just to mention in an example about how important is digital epidemiology nowadays.
Amazing. So I'm curious though still how, as somebody that was a researcher that had developed this idea in a university, why could you not have just gone and to work in partnership with the government to develop the test? Why did it become something in your mind that needed to become a business?
Yeah, because the scalability, it's really hard to scale up a research project. It's easier to scale up a business. We could work on the business plan. We could work with stakeholders, with B2B partners, even government, with venture capital market. So we have more assets to scale up an innovation when we are going to entrepreneurship instead of keep doing that things inside academia.
Interesting. So we'll talk a little bit more about COVID because I guess you could not have created a better scenario to basically validate your business model. But I'd like to maybe go back to one of the early examples of this. And in that example, if you could explain to the viewer, like how does Epitrack work and what's the significance of the business?
Usually we deploy a digital channel that could be a mobile app, that could be a website, or even a system for SMS for text messages. And through this channel or through these several channels, we can ask individuals to report symptoms and exposure questions about their routine. With the combination of those symptoms, we could evaluate the potential syndromes or disease that those participants or those individuals are under risk. And through our algorithms, we are able to find patterns. If we identify a cluster of individuals reporting similar symptoms at the same space and time, this might be the very beginning of a disease outbreak. And we can offer this strategic and intelligent information for the decision makers to start an intervention. But the real different thing right here is the importance or the role of an individual, because in the end of the chain, we give back this information to the participants. So we empower them about how healthy is the community they are living, and this can have the feeling of a feedback, right. And we can keep motivating them to keep reporting that symptoms.
That's fascinating. So, it strikes me that this is I can immediately see how you can identify patterns just by gathering this data that will allow you to provide immense value for other stakeholders in the public health chain. But I'm curious, who's the client in this case? Like, where does the money come from?
Yeah, this is a really good question because it drives me to several different scenarios that we faced in the past years. We started Epitrack thinking that our client for this kind of product would be government. But at the same time, it's really difficult to build a business model dependent on government only. And then we started seeking partners that could fund those projects, mainly nonprofit organizations, big foundations, or institutions that usually give grants for startups. But at the same time, we realized, actually 2 years after that, we realized that this would not be a good way to make the model sustainable. And then we decided to move for the private sector. Before COVID pandemic, no one on private sector was concerned about the impact of a pandemic that more might cause in the society. So we tried to pack in a different way the importance of bringing the perspective of digital epidemiology, but for other applications. We went to the venture capital market, we got investment, and we released a platform that tried to be a kind of revolution for health, because we were offering a doctor appointment at home for a very affordable price. And through that data that the doctor would collect, we would be able to keep building epidemiological scenarios about epidemics and disease outbreaks and even other health scenarios. It turns out this product was too modern maybe for the scenario, for the market. And after 4 months,
Onicio, I also would have thought that it would also be a very slow way to gather data if you're relying on a doctor to input that data rather than the public to provide that data. Was that the case?
Yeah, actually, we have pros and cons, but in our situation, we are confident that we could leverage the data quality because the price was very affordable. So anyone in Brazil that would like to avoid the public health services, which is terrible, but at the same time, those that don't have resources to pay for a health insurance plan, our product would be the perfect solution for them. And the demand of health assistance in Brazil is huge. So we thought that this could be a good channel to leverage information for epidemiological scenarios. But again, the product was too different for the scenario, for the market. Even the whole exercise we did for the validation of the product. It turns out the only way to validate the product is trying and experimenting in real, and then we realized that this would not be a good channel to spend the rest of the money that we got from investment. Then we pivot for other model.
So how did the model then evolve from that to the next stage?
Yeah, we killed the B2C model, and then we take advantage about our methodologies and our algorithms in computational epidemiology to offer for healthcare institutions that same models, but dealing with different problems. For example, we were able to identify outbreaks of high costs in healthcare institutions, for example, showing to the decision maker which was the problem or the bottleneck in their entire network that they've built. And this product actually worked really well. We got several clients about that, but we got at the point that it would not scale up as fast as we would like to see that. That's why we pivot again And in the end of 2019, we realized and conclude that maybe we should stop Epitrack for a moment and see. I don't know. We would like to dedicate more for the academia work and pause for a moment. But COVID came in 2020, and then we back Epitrack to the origins, back in working with epidemics and disease outbreaks.
It's interesting. I recently interviewed another entrepreneur who talks about how the transformation in his business occurred because of COVID. I mean, it completely radically changed his business model, very unlike yours. But I mean, it strikes me, COVID was the perfect example. I mean, still in Canada here, we're doing contact tracing. Into every venue we go in, that information is captured. So I'm curious. So first of all, what happened to your investor? Did your investors stick with you through this process, or did they say, thanks, we're out?
Yeah, they say thanks, we are out. And but this is actually because the story of behind Epitrack is really interesting, because we have different scenarios all the time. We looks like a TV show at Netflix, because every season is completely different from the previous one. The investors stick with us through the first and second wave of the pandemic, but and they tried to leverage again, even discussing about maybe put more money to accelerate our growth. But at the same time, we understood that maybe Epitrack would not be a business for that kind of investor. And we just refuse keep receiving investments from them until 3 months ago, where they mentioned that they would like to leave Epitrack and make an exit. And during that time, we had the opportunity to start a conversation with other big companies that were interested into acquire Epitrack. The details about this outcome I cannot reveal so far, but maybe in the next few months you hear something different about Epitrack and how we ended this story.
Did you have any entrepreneurial background prior to launching Epitrack?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, my parents were entrepreneurs here in the city that I'm right now, but they were running they are running a store that sells electric pieces and materials, not anything related to technology or even health.
Yeah, it's not easy to see the connection between an electronics retailer and epidemiology research and eventually a venture. So you made the decision, and you still are an academic.
Yeah,
I'll point that out for the viewer. But you made a decision, to go into academia, become very serious about this. So I'm curious, trying to make that transition from university into a venture, what was that experience like for you?
Well, it's hard to say, because I'm still on both. I'm still running Epitrack, and I'm still a researcher, running my career as a researcher. And in the case of Epitrack, this is really strategic, because the things that I learn and that develop in the academia, I use Epitrack to scale up and to bring to the market. For example, we had a product running in St. Gallen, Switzerland, which was an outcome from our research in the last 4 years. So the COVID gave us the opportunity to transform in a product, some method that we developed. We transformed the product and we sold for this cantonal hospital in Switzerland. So this is a good example showing how we are trying to converge the academia efforts into market products.
I hope you enjoyed part 1 of our 2-part interview with Onicio Neto, founder of Epitrack. Please click through to part 2, where you'll discover more about how COVID rejuvenated the business and how Epitrack helped one of the countries most hard hit by COVID track its outbreaks.